issued to Springline Architect. Again, one, as we mentioned about capacity and how many projects are being taken on as more projects have also come online. So the design team is the task orders are executed, and then we can now bring the design teams to start working on those. But there are a significant amount of projects that are currently in design, and it's the availability of the task or to execute the task order and move those projects forward.
What is the timeline for the restoration of the Florence William Library in Christiansted?
Right now, the project got underway in February. The anticipated completion date, I believe, was October of this year.
Five
but
minutes.
we will have to extend that contract due to some other repairs that now need to be done that were not evident at the initial portion of the project.
What timeline do you have in place or a tentative timeline right now?
I do not have the actual timeline, Senator. That's going to be the contractor will base that on the availability of the materials and such.
Any of these library be ready? And this is a little hard question, I guess. Between 2022 and 2023 school year?
We should have one library back online within the 2022-2023 school year.
At that time, would you have sufficient librarians for these libraries?
We currently have one, and we are searching for a second librarian. The plan is to have both in whatever facility is open at that time.
Talk about the Peterson Library. You said it came in 100% higher than the budget cost based on the scope of work. What created that?
It's the unknown when it comes to the mold remediation for the building, Senator.
The mold, say that again? I didn't hear it clear.
It's the unknown. So mold remediation was estimated at $85,000. The cost for the mold remediation, when we went out to bid twice, came in at over $300,000 for the project. And what is taking place is that there is unknowns during that the contractor is bidding on because they don't have direct access to actually see inside of the crawl spaces, inside of the roofing area spaces, because it is primarily wooden panel on the interior. And so the estimates that are being brought up for mold remediation are 4 times what was actually estimated, bringing the project to 100% higher. So what we are doing now is doing more mold investigation and having a scope of work specifically related to mold so that now we can put the projects out for bid as 2 separate things.
Application portal opened in May 29, 2022. And as of right now, will remain open until June 18. There will be 2 weeks appeal period for those determined to not be eligible. The final disbursement will be determined by the total amount of eligible application. Is there someone in your department helping applicants that are not familiar with technology to complete the application through the portal?
Yes, Senator, not only us, but there are EDA staff as well. We've been doing information sessions, and there will also be sessions to assist with the portal. And it's not in the testimony because we made this decision yesterday following consultation with the EDA, but the portal period is now going to remain open until July 1st. And we are also going to request an extension on the project from NOAA so that we can extend the period out a little bit more as well.
As of today, do you have a count of how much fishermen have applied for that stimulus fund?
Yes.
The number we have in?
5.
5?
5. Which is why we made the decision.
Getting out there?
Yes, the
That number
information is getting out there,
with
Senator.
the fishermen that I hearing complaining and the hardship that they experience in the loss of their pat and stuff like that, especially the guys that are going deep water. You know, when you speak to these fishermen and you see the cost of a fish pat that they drop in the deep water, it's rebar steel that they're using on these pat in order to get those pat to go down. So sometimes these pat could run these guys $1,500, $2,000 a pat. And when they lose these parts, how do they recoup? I don't understand it. How is the information getting out there? Because that number is not acceptable. It isn't.
So, Senator, I want to make sure you understand that the portal that is open through the end of this month is for the CARES Act stimulus, which is an economic stimulus, which is the loss of income during the period CARES Act 1 is from March to July, Madam Chair, if I may. And then CARES Act 2 is from July to December or August to December. So the infrastructure losses from the storm, those types of things are covered by our hurricane disaster recovery period, which receipts for rebuilding the actual infrastructure pots, anything traps, those things is a different type of program and the receipts cover those. This portal is covered by demonstrating a 35% or more economic loss. And we've had a number of both in-person, last night was our fourth, I believe, in-person information session, as well as flyers being placed out, media ad campaigns. We've been running the program informations on the Spanish stations for our Spanish-speaking population as well. We've had about 7 or 8 different types of outreach events to include the ag fair that took place as well. So the information has been running. The issue is that of eligibility and whether or not the fishers feel that they will be eligible, because you have to demonstrate, very clearly how your economic losses between from 1 year to then the pandemic year for comparison.
Madam Chair, I'm going to wrap up on this and I'll say to the commissioner, you need to go to the fishermen and meet them where they're at. I've been by the fish market this week and I haven't seen one flyer on that building. The only flyer I saw was the flyer for the closing of the cleaning station. And those flyers should be posted down there in English and in Spanish. But I think we really need to reach out to the fishermen to make sure that they're getting fully informed of what's available for them. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Welcome, Senator Johnson. Senator Blyden. Well, please mark Senator Bailey as, I think that's him. That's him, right? Yes? Okay, yes. Please mark Senator Bailey as present. Senator Blyden, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues, viewing, listening audiences, staff, essential staff. Good morning, Commissioner Director Oyo, and also Director Williams Actilin, and thank you so much for your testimony. Director, you have a lot going on, a lot, but I appreciate the testimony, good information. I would just like to add my 2 cents when it comes to the fishers. So I realize you have done a lot to assist them, in terms of getting the word out there. But there's some type of disconnect apparently somehow. As you said, maybe some of them are not sure if they qualify. So is there any way we can actually have a process where they still come in, help them fill out the application in whatever way we can? And if they don't, then they don't, but at least, we give them the opportunity to at least come forward, and don't be scared to come forward. We gotta find a way to help them because it's tough out there right now, and they do spend a lot on their equipment, etc. And it will be nice to just have a process to really inviting atmosphere where they come forward. 55, that's very low. And my colleague is correct, they complain a lot. I hear a lot of complaints from them when I go to buy my fish, etc. So if there's any way we can assist also. Please let us know how we can assist, because I think it's very important that we all work together, because we all want to assure that we utilize those funds that's going to assist our people, because they're going to only be spent in our economy. So we all win as a result of that. Um, Let me go through your testimony and start with the VI Council of the Arts, the CARES Act Stimulus Program. And in your testimony, you spoke to the NEA Stimulus Fund to Artists throughout the territory. And it provided a maximum of 50,400 to individuals. How many individuals did that assist? Do you know? What's the number?
I do have that statistic, Senator. I'll pull it up. If you have another question, I'll answer
Sure.
that while I'm pulling it up.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, my question is going to be to numbers, etc., and data, because I think it's important that we have a better picture, an idea of who's being assisted, and how did these individuals know of these programs and the funds that were available? How did they know?
Sure. So VICA does an annual grant program, and I believe there's a total of there might be like over 100 artists that we give mini grants to. Individuals are eligible for $5,000, and organizations are up to 10,000. So every year we have a mailing list. We do a pre-application, actually pre-application right now, or no, I'm sorry, the application period for 2023 grants is actually open right now until August. All of that went out last week. So what they did once they received those funds is they sent out notices to their entire mailing list, put it on their social media that these things were available, eligible, and what the eligibility requirements were. So they sent it out, and then they had a number of applications that came in. I am pulling that information up right now.
Okay.
But I believe, well, I'll be able to tell you right now the total amount of applications, and this will be a mix of. So under the American Rescue Plan, we had a total of 16 companies that were eligible or that received grants. And then under our CARES Act funding, there were this was another 12, like the Pistarckle Theater, St. John Singers, Caribbean Ritual Dancers, Point Academy, Crujan Heritage, and Nature Tourism. So the organizations, again, we place the requirements out there. We send it in a blast to all of the mailing list of artists, and then they respond by submitting their application.
Because the arts play a vital role in our community, and we have a lot of artists in many different instances, and also these numbers. I would like to see more individuals apply to these different opportunities that are available to them. So nonetheless, I'm going to have a conversation with you after the hearing, follow-up meeting, to see how we can actually get the word out to these individuals and actually have them come in and utilize and take advantage of these opportunities.
5 minutes.
Let's go to the historical recovery program. You also spoke in your testimony to, as of the close of March 2021, DPR now received 223 applications, and 105 were deemed ineligible. Of the 128 eligible applicants, 106 phase 2 applications, and our external panel has reviewed and have scored 70 applications. How does that process look like? What do you mean by scored? What the scope in order for them to actually get through? And for those that were not eligible, was it because of, what were the reasons why?
So there's two reasons on the eligibility. I guess I can start with that, Senator. The first thing was duplication of benefits. Like you had people who actually received insurance payments and then were looking to duplicate that. So that wasn't allowed. The second one is actually contributing to a National Historic Register site. So you have a number of applications that are actually in the historic district, and we had a number that weren't. And then the question was whether or not they contributed to a National Historic Registered site. So if you are not inside the district, it's much more difficult to place that requirement or gain that eligibility requirement.
Before you continue, do these individuals within a historical district know they have to do that upfront in order for them to be?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
why we ran the application in 2 phases. The first was the eligibility phase from November to March. And then from there was a determination on whether or not it actually became eligible from a geographic standpoint. Once you know, or there was, I think, 3 or 4 different criteria, like it had to be an active site. You had to have been presently either living or serving as, it had to be active, the, WAPA bill, something going on there. The Now with respect to the scoring panel, so the one of the requirements is that again there's so much money that's involved to be dispersed and at a high ceiling as well. And so what we wanted to do was we have to create a ranking because we received more application requests than we actually have money for. And so the idea of the scoring is which one met the highest criteria, and then also, where we felt the need may be as well. And so that scoring panel was done, and what we did is invited the Puerto Rico State Historic Preservation Office to be on our scoring panel, and we're serving on theirs, vice versa, to assist us with this project.
Okay, finally, before my time is up, let's speak to the Fort Christian Museum, PW 1036. I know there was a federal
2 minutes.
obligation, a federal share of 51,445. What's the amount though?
So right now, what we are asking is we have been able to document about 1.4 million in damages. The project was originally obligated at only 226,000 in damages. In that 1.4, we're also asking for an increase to the amount allowable for administrative costs, which is to pay for the A&E services. So once we can get that portion through, and then we can speak to the overall, and those conversations are ongoing with FEMA right now.
And that has something to do also with the skyrocketing increase in cost with everything, correct?
I think right now we haven't really done a hard dive on the cost for the damages. Like these are just a sort of a cursory review and rough estimates that were done, because right now we're focused really on what the services from the A&E are, and making sure that we can get an approval to be able to pay for the A&E services.
Okay, very well. And let's speak to the library in St. John and Sparrow Library. What's the amount of that contract, first of all?
I believe it's $386,000, somewhere around there.
And $386,000?
To go up.
Correct. And the delays by the contractor, have everything been rectified to this point?
Not everything. We have some fixes right now due to the assistance being offered by the Office of Disaster Recovery to at least get it back on track. But we're actively working on that right now.
So once we have everything on track, hopefully by August, what time frame have the contractor received in order to get his work completed?
It is really August right now.
Okay, very well. Sounds good to me. Thank you so much. I look forward to having those libraries back online for our students and children in the territory. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the time, and thank you for your responses. Director.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Blyden. Let's go back to the Fort Christian really, really quick. I'm happy that the fort is being opened and used for the public, as we were once enslaved and imprisoned there. The question I have would be, I remember years ago when the fort was closed and repairs were being done, they indicated the structure of the fort at the time was kind of shaky because it's been built a long, long time ago. And we always have tremors, so it does compromise the structure of the fort. And what is the difference between the constant tremors impacting the structure of the fort and having events in the fort where we have music at high decibels that could appear to be like an earthquake as well. The same the sound reverberating on the walls, it does have the same impact. So um, talk to me on that.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. So one of the hardest working people in all of DPNR, his name is Martin Walter Dukes, and he's our maintenance person at the fort. And the reason why, like you said, is every single car that goes by blasting everything. The fort is made of molasses and stone. Like, and no matter how many times you plaster it, paint it, the the core of it is that it's molasses and sand with stone, and those are the types of things that were in there. And so with the exposure to the salt, it becomes very brittle, and the passing sound waves actually cause the paint to crack, the things to chip, and then you are there, and Martin every day is sweeping up all of that. So that's why I say he's one of the hardest working people in DPNR. What we can control is who we invite to come into the fort, and we put some very specific requirements on the noise level that takes place. For a very long time, I was very careful about what types of live music. Like, I have no issues with instruments, orchestra, those types of things. I was being very reserved on allowing speakers, DJ, all of that. Um, we've decided to revisit that and see whether or not, if we put some very strict conditions in there, whether or not, and actually observe and have people observe, be part, like be there during those events and make sure that everybody is observing and following the regulations that we put in. So we had one large event at the start of Carnival, and it was rather successful. I think that a lot of people will want to see that same type of event there. And as long as everybody abides by what it is the regulation is in terms of how loud the sound is, how many speakers, those types of things, I think we can, in fact, make it more of a space that can be used. But we're being very careful. The other thing we want to do, unfortunately, it's not something that's FEMA eligible for funding, but it's something that we're going to put emphasis on, is on the east side. You see the crumbling wall that is in there. It's called the East Ravelin Wall. It is very important to the foundation of the fort and will provide additional stability. We finished the design plans for those in early 2021. And so now we just need to cost it and figure out, well, when we go to repairs, we're also going to include fixing the Ravelin Wall to provide that stability.
That's right here where you have the fence up?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, well, so you don't have a cost for that yet?
We don't have the
Okay.
cost yet.
Okay. And we have Sons of the Virgin Isles as well that we have in a fort, but we have, it's orchestra and music. So I just wanted to know what is the impact of that to the fort?
Yeah, everything, sound waves do have an impact. We see the chippings. We're trying to work with the National Park Service on coming up with a stronger plaster that does not deteriorate as quickly. But the exposure to the salt very nearby is, it will be something that will just require consistent maintenance on there. We've switched to a silicate paint, which absorbs more. That silicate paint is, it's not like you don't go to Home Depot on it. It's like $200 a gallon, that kind of thing. So,
And what about, I'm a history buff, right? My favorite fort, I visit forts across the world, but I really love San Cristobal for some reason, and Fort Del Moro in Puerto Rico. And they have self-guided tours. Is part of your FEMA plan or in the resilience or the Stafford Act, is there anything while restoring the fort that we can put up better signage, like the first Lutheran church is in the fort,
So
know?
we're actually
And
not through FEMA.
and sorry, quickly, even grants, because even within the fort, there's the markings on the floor in the fort that indicate
Key.
where the first fort was.
Yes.
And nobody really knows the history inside of the fort. So talk to me, is there a federal grant or something that we can do to make the fort more marketable for those who are historic tourists?
Yes, there is. So, late last year, the USEDA provided a $10 million grant to the Division of Tourism, and a lot of it has to do with improving the tourism product of the territory. And so we have been awarded, DPNR has been awarded a subgrant of those funds, and our plan is to actually hire a company that will not only do the conceptual plans for the build out of the exhibits pursuant to our instructions, but also to do the audio visual for the self-guided tours. Our goal is such that we can give you a headset and you walk through each of the exhibit areas and the marker can go off and you start hearing through your headsets exactly what it is you're seeing if you're not undertaking a fully guided tour.
Perfect, thank you, Senator. Point of information, Senator Blyden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Romeo, what's the amount of the sub-grantee for DPNR?
500,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Senator Joseph?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. A pleasant good morning to you, my colleagues, the listening and viewing audience, the people of the Virgin Islands, and to you, Commissioner Oriel. A pleasant good day. I want to start off, as I always try to do, is to really commend you and your staff for doing the hard work and heavy lifting that you do. Sometimes we lock horns regarding to enforcement, but know that I appreciate all that you and your team are working to achieve on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands, and I really want to say thank you. I want to do a really quick review, and it's a comparative review of your testimony presented today to your testimony that was presented at the Committee on Government Operations meeting that was held on February 17th. And I did a really quick comparison. And I want to start off with VICA and the Virgin Islands Council of the Arts and the monies that they receive from the National Endowment of the Arts Stimulus Grant Funds. I noted in your testimony in February that you said that VICA had received over $500,000 from it's right here, $500,000, slightly over $500,000, and they have dispersed around 90% of the funds to their grantees. However, it's a little slightly contradicted. It's not a major contradiction for me because I know things when you're applying for grants, certain things may happen. The grantor may look at certain scope of work, and you may have had to do a budget modification. But your testimony reflects only $411,900. So we have a difference of $88,100. Would you be so kind to speak on that?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. So the testimony for today is specifically on disaster recovery awards. So the 411 is not part of the operating budget or the normal grant procedure that VICA actually issues.
Okay, so are you saying that these two are two different grants?
Yes.
Oh, and they're still from the same, because it said VICA stimulus grants here, and it says the same thing here.
That's correct.
Yeah, for so you're saying what is the number, the grant award number?
You'd have to give me a few minutes, Senator, to be able to pull that up.
Okay, I will continue.
So I can tell you what the award number. I'm sorry, I do have right in front of me the award number for our CARES Act grant, which is project number F80J4.
F80J4.
And then, I'm sorry, that's our American Rescue Plan that was awarded for 2022. And then we have F80
But I'm not
F9.
looking at a American Rescue Plan here.
So,
I'm just looking at what you represented in your testimony. I don't want to belabor this. You represented in your testimony that this is CARES Act stimulus program, and that's the grant number I would like. And the other one that you represented in February 17th indicated the stimulus grant, and they both funding source is the National Endowment of the Arts. So I just wanted to get the federal project number, the award number. If you have it available, if not, you can forward it to the chair. Okay, so we don't waste too much of my time. Okay, so I also wanted to just, and I really want to commend the team there too, because they've been spending down some of this money and doing a really good job trying to spend on the money. Now, let us look at, if we can, with your testimony relative to the derelict vessel removal. How are we working with that? Because I noted in your testimony on February 17th, you have the same number here, 30 vessels and other objects have been removed. But in your testimony today, you also indicated that you have a funding in the amount of $186,900.
5 minutes.
I am on page 4 of your testimony, so you can follow me. And I know you wrote it because you're a very good, prolific writer. So tell me where we are as far as the vessels being removed, because we still have some derelict vessels here.
so Senator, the St. Thomas contract has been completed.
And this 186,900 is for St. Croix?
That's correct.
Okay, I wasn't clear about that. Thank you. And how long is this contract for? Is until October 2022?
That's correct.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Now, just still moving through your testimony, I'm on page 5. You mentioned at the bottom of page 4, continuing on page 5, the FEMA flood mitigation grant, which is $960,000. But at the end of the first paragraph, you indicated that you have requested that the legislature pass some law regarding the building and flood management plan. Is this having our not addressing this issue having any impact on your federal funding?
Not on our federal funding, for not updating. What it does is actually, from an operational standpoint, it creates some issues because we're not currently using the most updated FEMA firm maps right now.
And tell me this, how is that going to play into effect should we, God forbid, we get another storm and FEMA comes in and they don't see this flood mitigation in play and is not enacted? How is it going to affect the regular Joe or Jane in our community who may not have insurance?
So that's where the key lies. It's by updating the firm maps and then also adapting the language that the department can also use any additional tools. The firm maps set what the lines and delineated markers are for the flood insurance. So right now, by updating it, you may pull some people who are paying for flood insurance out of the flood zone based on the last instances, and then other people who may not have been included are now included. So there could be a shift, particularly in St. Croix, where there's flatter area. The idea is to make sure that people have coverage under the National Flood Insurance Program. If we're not, one of the fears that I have is that if we don't update, then FEMA may impact what the premium for the territory is. hopefully not like a full point or something like that, but any increase on that percentage means you're paying more for your your flood insurance.
Okay, and so that has a direct correlation to um, our homeowners being able to be eligible and ineligible for FEMA flood insurance because of where their properties are located. And so we need to see that it's aligned to the federal standard if we are going to, God forbid, look at any FEMA funding coming in the future.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Understood. Now, I'm still on page 5 of your testimony. This property you mentioned, Mercurio landslide acquisition. What is the size of the property?
I believe it's a little over a half an acre, like maybe 0.6, if I remember correct.
Okay. Okay. It's about 0.6. Yeah, over half an acre. Okay. And then I also had a couple of other questions relative to some of the outstanding challenges that you see. I don't know if any other committee member may have inquired about that as far as your grants. And before you answer that, I needed to get an understanding from you the performance periods for a lot of these grant award. I know you've supplied a very detailed spreadsheet, but I couldn't discern and understand the performance periods. That's very critical for me and for all of us as legislators because we have oversight to be able to see the performance periods and how much you've completed. Madam Chair, may I wrap up? Thank you. I also want to finally say I really want to commend you. I was doing some counting and I saw that you have about 12 of your projects on the spreadsheet that have been completed, and about 5 of them have not started, including the one at the Cyril E. King Airport. But I could understand why some of those issues, those may not be started, but I definitely would like to get the performance grant periods in your spreadsheets going forward. Madam Chair, I thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to the people of the Virgin Islands. Good morning to the testifiers. Good morning, colleagues. Commissioner, in reference to Crowds Lagoon, I know there's the one area that's supposed to be repaired sharply, which is bridge that was it. Not Crowds Lagoon, Altona Lagoon. Altona Lagoon. There's an area by the bridge that is supposed to be repaired under one of those road projects. Have the design been completed and it's that out of bid?
So
I think that to go.
Senator, we don't have the project for the bridge. That's actually Public Works. The Public Works Division has received their permits from DPNR. I believe it was September, October of last year. But we're not the ones doing the contract for the bridge.
Let Ms. Octalyn weigh in because that is an important part of one of our fisheries, which is Altona Lagoon. But that particular area, I don't think we got federal funds for dredging or anything. But is there a plan to clean that particular area? The mouth of the fisheries going in or where the water going is, it's really, the sand is accumulating and there's minimal water flow because it used to be dredged ever so often and it hasn't been dredged in about 15 years. And I'm concerned about the entire Altona Lagoon, the inflow and outflow of water. Is there a plan for that?
So, Senator, I can say that we have, in fact, dredged the Altoona Lagoon in the past. I would also state that we've dredged it sooner than 15 years ago. I can recall at some point while being director of CZM that we had, in fact, dredged it, the department had. We can take a look at that because it is, we can definitely put something towards the maintenance on that, though.
if you did it before, then when you're there, you truly understand the importance of keeping that particular area open. Have you had a chance to see the condition of it currently and
Yes,
the limited
I was
Okay.
actually at Altoona Lagoon during Ag Fair weekend.
Okay, so you're developing a plan to get that area dredged.
Yes.
Thank you so much. What is the intended use of the Enid Bar Library after it's completed?
So on the bottom floor, we intend to have a shop, a retail space for items that are currently, we want to give our vendors that work with VICA on the Made in the USVI pop-up shop a more permanent, more prominent position to sell their goods. So the ground floor will be that, as well as a small welcome center, and trying to bring tourists up to the western end of the Main Street area. The second floor, I'm sorry?
Yeah, the second floor.
Second floor, our intention is to have a small type of library slash public computer space. But we also want to have some space that's left for partnerships, maybe with the university, and offering like tutoring sessions. We want to really have it as library space, but classroom, and then also exposure to the digital library. And that's on the western end. On the eastern end, we're looking at some sort of flexible exhibit. It can be anything from, genealogy in the territory. It could be, one of the things that I like is something to do either Virgin Islands Heroes or Virgin Islands Sports Heroes, something that can be changed. But it's demonstrating the history of the Virgin Islands there. The top floor is going to be where we are going to move our Virgin Islands Council of the Arts. They are currently paying rent for where they are, and we're going to capitalize on the reduction of the operating costs, but then they'll also have direct access to their vendors. And then we would also be providing them a larger courtyard space in the back in order to do different events from.
Yeah, thank you so much. Where were the archives removed from the bottom floor? I heard you speak to some damage for those documents that were on the ground level or close to the ground and those on the wall. Were they removed and placed in a safe place?
They have not yet been removed. Most of them are actually in decent shape up. We turn the AC on
5 minutes.
on a consistent cycle to make sure that there's no deterioration. When we move them, we want to move them for digitization. And that's something that we are currently working on getting this and securing the funding for. When we take them out of those packages, we want to just get them to the digitization phase.
Rugal, your own factory. What's the intended use?
The government of the Virgin Islands is having some conversations about some private investment in that property. And because those discussions are ongoing, Senator, I can definitely speak with you offline about it, but don't want to put too much out there in the public sphere.
Those discussions has been going on for quite a while, I think like 2 years with that particular area, with this particular venture that is supposed to take place there. So I think we need to either speed that up, or we need to turn that. That's a wonderful facility. We need to turn it into a tourist excursion. In reference to your derelict vessel, this last phase is going to remove those boats that still sunk. It's going to remove all, or we'll still have left back to this.
Well, unfortunately, particularly in the St. Thomas district, we removed a significant number, and there's now a few more that have popped up.
There's also some here in Christiansted Harbor, right by the seaplane, as you're taking off. Is that targeted
Yes.
to be removed?
I believe there are 4 vessels within the Christiansted Harbor that are in the contract right now. There are another, I believe, 3 in Salt River. And then there's some others that are scattered to make up the 12 in the St. Croix district.
Okay. The online portal that was created for the fishermen, is that the only access for them to apply? Is it only online?
Yes.
There's no paper application process?
Not that I am aware of, no.
Do you believe that that is a possible hindrance to some of the fishermen to be able to access the online portal, and we need to create an avenue for them to receive some assistance in getting onto the portal?
So what we're offering is assistance with entering the information directly. So we can use the different computer centers across the territory, hold workshops with them to assist them with entering in their information. But the portal is going to be the way that the applications are
And that's fine.
processed and everything.
That's fine. When is the first
2 minutes.
of such event where you're going to open up a computer center, ask the fishermen to come, and have staff there that would be able to assist them?
I'm not completely sure. I know right now what we're doing next week is, again, still broadcasting more availability. And then a number of the...
Broadcasting, we have some fishermen, and that's what they do, they fish. And requesting that they go and fill out this online portal isn't going to work out. We need to create a venue where we invite the fishermen of St. Thomas, the fishermen of St. Croix, that a computer, an area that is sacred computers, that we have staff to be able to relay the information and input information so we could get signed up. I think you only have 5 individuals showing that there is a particular issue. And when I leave here, I'm going to be going to some of the fishermen to find out if there's an issue with them accessing the portal or whether they have internet connectivity. But there is an issue, it just be online. So I would typically suggest that, if possible, if you can have the staff someplace at an announced meeting 1 or 2 days to try and just come in and put the information, that would be perfect. Your neighbor, the naval barracks yard and St. Thomas, what was the completion date for that?
Can you repeat the question, Senator? You were breaking up.
You were saying that the old naval barracks in Sub Base
Yes.
that will serve as the future home of DPNR, what's the completion date for that project?
I'm hoping by October of 2023.
October of 2023. Okay,
That's-
so until that time, you're still in the airport?
No, we've been out of the airport since October of 2018. Last year, I moved the department out of the Turnbull Library, and we are leasing commercial space in the middle building that VIA is in the St. Thomas district.
Okay. Going back to the Brugger facility, because we were negotiating or waiting for this particular venture, that means that the work is not going on?
Senator,
Restore the building?
that's correct. Right now, because it would take architectural and engineering. If we are not going to permanently have that space for the department, then I do not want to obligate funds towards A&E that won't go to us.
Okay, and that venture has spoken to property and procurement. They're in the process of trying to develop a lease agreement.
I am not sure exactly where that particular portion lies.
We can't wait on that forever. No, this is gonna talk on that particular facility. So we have to move on. The Peterson Library, you said that the bids came in 100% higher than the estimates.
That's correct.
Did you have access to some other PFA funds? I think you had some $750,000 that was earmarked for that particular project, and that supplement to fill the gap, or it was so much higher?
No, I mean, the estimate for the project, the estimated cost was, I believe, around $500,000. We obligated through our FEMA fund 600,000, and it came in at 8 and change, almost 9. So,
So stop there. Don't you have PFA funds? You have 700. I think it's $750,000 in PFA funds from a one of the bond proceeds for the McFarland Library. Can't you use that to supplement and get that project going?
Senator, I'm not aware of any bond proceeds for Peterson Library. We had PFA funds for the Turnbull Library, and we had PFA funds for the Fort Christian Museum. And we are regularly spending on that, but not for the Peterson Library, at least not to mine. Nothing that I've seen in 3 years.
I'm almost sure. I'm going to check it and get back to you because I'm almost sure that it's there.
Yeah, it's not on my quarterly statement from the PFA.
Maybe it's a different funding source. I'm going to look and see if I can find it. And your plan is to spend the remainder of the community up events during Coast Week in September.
We have broadcast even recently. We've spoken to a couple of organizations, and we'll probably also get out a couple $1,000s here and there. But typically, when Coast Weeks is coming up, you have schools, you have different organizations. They're all organizing beach cleanups. So we know that there will be sort of a bulk of requests in September for Coast Week.
Okay, that is it. The next question. The permitting process for Envision. That a streamlined process now?
It is, yes.
So you're able to get those permits out in what, a couple weeks?
Less than that. Most of them are really like repairs and pulling electrical. There's most of the Envision is repair work, and so they can take like 2 weeks. If it is a complete rebuild, which I know we've had 2 or 3 of those, that would be, our average right now on building permit for residential structures is about 21 days right now.
Are you seeing a lot of activity with the Envision program? Because we still getting a tremendous amount of complaints in reference to homes.
No, Senator. Not a tremendous amount on the building permit. We do have a lot on the Madam Chair, if I may, the clearance, because we also have to do 106 clearance on each application, which is under SHPO. So those are usually done in volume, like sending 30 applications at a time for review to get the 106 clearance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You concluded, Senator Vele?
Just about, let me just ask Director Williams one question. Has a group been selected for the Envision program? Have they finally executed a contract?
The staff augmentation contract is currently being evaluated.
So no.
No, they have not selected, but they're in the process. And we expect that we should have a recommendation to the board by Monday of next week.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's go back to the Init Ember Library. What's the time frame? Because I know when Senator Jackson spearheaded that legislation, working closely with him, you said that you believe the bottom floor is going to have this and that. The law does specifically indicate the use of the building, and it's exactly what you said. And I think he had this vision of every time we travel to DC, we would end up meeting with the Smithsonian Institute in the African American Museum, and he has his connections there. And I think he wanted the Init Ember Library to really be the Smithsonian Institute of the Virgin Islands. That was his dream, his vision, that you can go ask the archives for information, old maps, and it would be there. And that would be our real, in the heart of downtown, the Smithsonian type Institute of the Virgin Islands. So what's your time frame to get there?
So I'm hoping to actually have that, Senator, before the end of this month. So the drawings have been completed. I think at 90%. There's a little bit of the mechanical that's left. And so the idea is that by the end of this month, we get from our A&E contractor the bid schedule, the bid timeframes, and be able to put the project out to bid. And so but I don't know exactly how long. I mean, I think what we would like to do is really and truly like maybe prioritize one of the floors, like get a lot of work done on the ground floor, get that portion back open, and you know.
What does your recruiting effort look like, insofar as I know a lot of Virgin Islanders away who are anthropologists, archaeologists, they're into historic preservation, and they would like to move home, but we don't have the market for them to move home. Do you envision the Enid Ember Library to be that place for them?
No, I
No?
don't. And the reason why I say that is because when the Turnbull Library facility was constructed, the ground floor, the build out of that was approximately $1.3 million just for the archival lab and facilities to not only display the archival materials, but also be able to perform work on them. So
And are we doing that now?
all of that info, and it is storing a bunch of material.
Because we're storing things everywhere. Because we
That's the
have.
problem.
Okay.
That's the
I
problem.
don't think that's adequate because we have a lot of antiques all over the island in different areas.
Yes.
So what can the library downtown store the archives that we have in various satellite locations?
I mean, the library downtown could store materials, but then in terms of having the display, having the work that's done, it's not the ideal location, particularly after we've spent all this money at Turnbull to do all of that. And so the there would be a minimal amount, if anything, in terms of actual storage because
Okay, let me go back. Not storage, but when you come off the cruise ship and you stroll downtown and you end up to the bottom of Main Street,
Mhm.
coming from the east side, that would be the bottom.
Yeah.
That would be the beginning from the west. And the tourist wants to walk in and see like an old coal pot used by a slave or a mortar and pestle, and would those things be on display?
So I would say that's where we want to have them on display at the Fort Christian, because that's sort of the museum for there. The idea that we're trying to move towards is archiving our records digitally, and then there would in fact be a section on the Enid Bar on the second floor that you would be able to do all of the records review from everything that we could digitize. The priority for me, in order to be more resilient and not lose any more paper, is to have all of the records that we have digitized properly and then readily accessible and searchable, not only on the web, but even as we put screens and different places where people could come and actually research those things there. So
Okay.
the eastern side of Ball Library on the second floor is what we're trying to reserve that space for.
Okay, I'll get back to you. 'Cause I have a whole discussion with you on historic preservation. Senator Francis, I see a mic, but I don't know if you have a point of inquiry or something. I don't know. I can't hear you. A point?
You do have an inquiry. I'm just waiting for you to
Oh,
to
sorry.
cease your.
Go ahead. Point of inquiry.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask Director Octalin. I know back in the 33rd legislature, we had this body had approved for a line of credit. I think it was like about $80 million for the purpose of being able to advance the need for payments and projects. Have there been any opportunity for you to be able to access that line of credit? It's still a good instrument, or what's happening with that?
So Senator, when we petitioned the FEMA to be able to pay on invoice, the need to draw on a line of credit and spend resources that was null and void. So we did not have credit. What we're seeing now is the fact that some are paid over. What we need to do though, although the bids come in higher, we also have to ensure that these are reasonable bids and accept them, because that is one of the tests of the federal agencies. We're able to ensure that these are valid bids.
So we're not no longer being challenged by the fact that we're delayed in able to access certain projects because the funding is not available at any given time. Have we been able to close that loop?
But any project that is obligated, in other words, we have the funds that the funds have been afforded to the territory, we're able to draw on those funds as long as we provide the proper documentation, we're able to draw on those funds immediately. So that's no longer an issue. That's one of the very first things that when the manual draw was lifted, that we were able to gain back that control here in the territory.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. Thank you for your response, Director.
You're welcome. So I'm going to ask some questions right now. The Fisheries Disaster Relief Recovery Program, what's the status of the funds allocated for the sculptured gardens?
So Senator, we're working with UVI on those.
So not tourism anymore.
For this,
They'll be marketing it, but
yeah, right now they're in there as artificial reef sites, and so we are working with UVI. The project, I think, will be to have several small sites rather than one large type of site.
Have you identified where those sites will be?
I believe there's some preliminary discussion. Because what we're doing is using some of the models that have been developed that look at larval transport and looking at both the fish and coral larval transport models to see where some of these locations can be.
And would it be in a time frame? Because we had 4 years to spend this funding, right?
Yes.
How close are we to that timeline?
I think we're a year and a half off still. We have until August of 2024 to spend that money.
Do you think we'll be able to spend it before 2024?
I believe so.
Okay. And the remaining funds from the very same disaster recovery program, what do you intend to use the remaining funds for?
So again, what we're doing is we've requested a reprogram. It's a little more than 10%, so we had to request it. But when the original application went out, it was to give somewhere around, I want to estimate it roughly like $8 million out as direct payments. We've received $6 million or paid out 6.1 in requests. By doing an additional, no questions asked, $5,000 payment to the fishers that qualified, I believe it's phase 2 or all, we now get to that 8 million, which is how the original award was broken up, and so that's what we've requested is to do.
So the reprogram request, what did you request it to go to, like commercial fishing?
Yes.
Also, commercial fishing would be okay. And what was it of the total dispersed amount? What was spent on administrative costs?
298,000. So it was just under the 10% of the total.
So the 298,000 went to the contractor.
Yes.
TSG.
Yes.
Okay.
So I believe 225 went to Widow Bryan TSG, and then we carved out the monies that were being for the two ladies that were the program assistants, Ms. Joelle Anderson, Ms. Charlene Isaac. So we were paying people through the PFA to be on the ground to assist with the fishers with all of that.
So what was the purpose of the 225? What was their role?
So theirs was the development of the program, the portal system, everything that they did on there.
And then the additional 98,000 went to?
The additional?
It was 98, you said? 98K?
No, for the two program assistants, it was like the balance. I think it was like 50 or 60,000 for the two of them.
Contract?
Yes.
And they've been able to square away all fishermen?
So all the fishers, all the registered fishers in the St. Croix district were completed. I heard that up to June 1, we got a new application in the St. Thomas district. So.
Okay, let's move to the Brugal facility. In your testimony, what will it be used for?
The original use of the facility is for a distillery. It has the tank in there. It has the structure in there. I mean, and a lot of the existing things could actually be polished up and used as part of a display museum, those types
Okay,
of
because
things.
one part of it is still used for fish and wildlife storage.
Not anymore. We've had too many break-ins, and so we've actually taken all of our equipment out of there.
So it's just the distillery, the old distillery.
Yeah.
And then while we're at that, that has one of the largest multi-species of the bat colony.
Yes.
So do you have plans to safeguard that colony?
So I know one of the things that we did is we have these bat houses that we've been erecting to have them, and then you can move those around. And we've been putting more of them up on the west end of St. Croix, trying to get the.
So we try and move the bats from the Brugal distillery to the west?
I mean, exactly. Just to distribute, break up the population, because at some point, if you're going to use the building, the bats have to go. So we're trying to just get them to.
But we're going to preserve the colony because it's a nice.
No,
I learned a little bit about bats. Didn't really focus much in science, but
you can
it was
do
important.
things that get them to not nest and roost there. Like,
Okay.
there's different sonic waves you can push. They don't like that pulse. You can tell them go somewhere else. And so it just prevents them from coming and sitting up in there all day, all night long.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're preserving that on the Brugal facility. Let's move to the Fisheries Cares Act your testimony and Stimulus 2 program. What's the anticipated cost to be paid to the EDA for disbursement related activity?
So right now, I believe it is around 300,000. It's a little, like what's in the award is I think 9.8 or something like that. But if there are some additional costs, I don't mind moving it to, cover a little bit more than 10%.
Okay, and what's the anticipated plans for the unobligated funds?
Unobligated, right now, we don't
You
have.
don't have, you don't,
Yeah, the idea
you
is
plan to
that.
expend all of the funds.
Correct. The idea is that the amount of applicants divided by the total amount of money is going to go to as a stimulus to the fishers. So the more people apply, the more parsed out that payment becomes.
Okay, just two more topics quickly, and then we move to Senator Francis for the second round. Project worksheet. (70889) Fish and Wildlife Building and Red Hook.
Mhm.
I see that it's been repaired, but I doubt that the staff can occupy that building half of the year from the toxic levels of sargassum.
That's correct.
Okay, so we fix a building, we can't occupy it because of the levels, because I don't even know how the students at UDR can function, because the smell is really, really bad. What's the department plans on?
We've currently gone to 3 different locations to move the staff, seeking a 2-year lease, because by the time when we finish the sub-base building, the fish and wildlife staff will be there, and the plan for the Red Hook is really to be sort of a lab opportunity for us, so not full-time operational.
Will be,
those types of
okay,
things.
because that's really, now, the students at UDR can as well. So while we move fish and wildlife out and it'll be a lab in Red Hook, how do we still help the people of that area? Because that's a tourist traffic area, people work there, students go to school there, and the stench sucks.
Yeah, so unfortunately, once the sargassum sort of bends its way into it, and so it just sunk the dampener, we've been working with several marinas to allow them to see how they can go, but you need a lot of reinforcement based on the volume that comes in. Either
Well,
that or you have
hold
to
on a
go out
second
and
then.
trawl it right away.
Director Actaline Williams, can this be a disaster-related project? Climate change, everything that's happening, sargassum will be impacting coastal regions. Any discussions with like NOAA, to the delegate, to increase our federal
I
fund? You? Okay.
Yes, we have put that out there because again, most of the dealings is federally declared disaster. We have raised the level of significance because of the public health issues that arise from the dissolved oxygen, and the the sulfur dioxide and everything. So we have put that out there on several occasions through the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force. And that's made up of the really high ups in the different federal agencies, including FEMA, with being at the table. So we'll just continue to push that. I know we push it with the fisheries administrator of NOAA as well, and recently during their visit with the assistant administrator of DOI for the insular area. So we have been pushing that discussion, us and Puerto Rico, very much so.
Okay. Director Actolini, you wanted to comment or you're good?
I was going to basically support what Commissioner Oriol just said.
Okay, good. Now let's move to the Gustave Kittel building in Frenchtown here. I had the opportunity to tour that building, and you said repairs are complete, right?
Yes.
Okay, who did the work?
So the staffer at the time that we had our maintenance supervisor, a lot of the concrete work and such that was done. So it was done in-house, and then I think a few small contractors. The total amount on that was under like 30,000 or something.
Okay,
like
I think
that.
we need to revisit
So
the
we're
Kittel.
we're
It's
working on a
leaking.
capital project.
Okay, because it's leaking right now, and fishermen pay for those stalls, and when it rains, it does leak.
Yeah, so we actually had Public Works out there several months ago to give us a a scope of work of what it would take. We have a capital cost. We actually applied for some additional funding through an opportunity that came up last year. Earlier this year, and we're going to be doing actually first the paving in the rear at the end of this month and fixing the cleaning tables, and then we are going to see where we can get that 300,000 to 400,000 is what we're estimating to do a capital repair on the building.
Okay, so as long as you know that we have to repair, okay. And then the Tombo Library, so staff is still at the VIA building, correct?
Yes, they should move next week.
How much is that costing us?
For the building itself, our annual lease, I believe, is 235,000.
Okay, and then what's the timeline to get staff back into their building, and to get the general public back into the library? And I'm asking this because we talk about, everything is correlated. So we sit in education hearings and we talk about the literacy rate, and we talk about our students not testing well and blah, blah, blah. And it really goes back to reading and comprehension, because even if it's math, if you're reading a math word problem, you still have to be able to decipher what the and means in the word problem and what's not. And I think that our community holistically, we do not have an appreciation for literacy and education. And then, of course, we send the wrong message when our library is not being used as a library, and it's closed at 5 in the afternoon. And then the UVI library becomes a de facto library for the community. So education is impacted by the lack of library resources that we do have, because you have seniors, doing applications, FAFSA forms. You have students that want to probably go and read, our young people, elementary students. We have to get them excited about learning and reading and libraries, and the libraries occupied by your department now. So what's your timeline to really restore the library to a library?
So my goal is to actually have Turnbull Library open, not this coming week, but the week after. It'll be the main circulation area, including the computer center. We have replaced the chiller unit inside. So that was the main issue, is that the chiller that was being rented, while the main chiller that was purchased as a result of our FEMA PW that broke down, and it broke down to the point where it could no longer be repaired. And those big chillers are things that you have to spec and bring in, and it broke down completely in March. And from the time we executed the contract, there were delays in manufacturing of the one that has now arrived. So the main chiller has in fact been replaced. The new one has been installed. It is installed right now. It is blowing. So now the issue is we have not been in that building for the last 3 months, so we're having it professionally cleaned next week.
So mold remediation as well.
So the mold remediation, the larger mold remediation is going to involve the removal of the walls. So what we are doing right now in terms
need a
of
whole new
remediation,
building?
it's exactly correct, Senator. I told you it came in $1 million over, and that is because the roof is being replaced in its entirety, and a sub-level is being put on so that if it gets damaged in the future, that we don't have the rain proliferation. We're replacing a lot of the walls with mold-resistant wallboard. We're replacing all the walls in the archival area with mold-resistant wallboard and making it more resilient to damages in the future. So it is a big project. And we will have to close the library because we won't subject our employees to work every day. We won't subject the visitors. So we're
the
going
library
to have to
still
move
is
all of
like,
that.
so we have to find a plan B to put basically a temporary library for the public because the scope of work does sound extensive.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And then the library hours.
So we have already notified the librarians and their union that when the lights were replaced in the parking area, that we are now going to create shift schedules and we were going to be extending hours. They were notified at the beginning of this calendar year.
And then any discussions with Public Works on their route?
We have
'Cause
had those discussions.
The bus does need to come to, because by the time, I don't know how we get students to a library when the bus drops them way down at the main road and they have to traverse through the mall up to Plaza Extra, then to climb the hill again. We're making learning hard and inaccessible.
Yes. So I mean the bus I have had that conversation with Commissioner Gabriel personally. We did see an increase because we're also working with their Vitran program trying to get our buses back on the street as well.
So the Vikings are working together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Always.
Senator Francis, Director Actaline, quickly, I saw, you have something to say? Because I see that the TV is on you.
Yes, I
Okay.
do. Can I get a recess to go
Sure,
to the
sure. The committee stands in a brief recess, and then when we return, Senator Francis, you're up for 7 minutes. The committee stands in recess.
No, it isn't. No. How?
I can't, I, am I good? The committee's back on the record. Ah, okay, good. We're back on the record. Senator Francis, you recognize for your 7 minutes.
Very much, Madam Chair. I just have a few more questions real quickly. Commissioner Oriol, in regards to enforcement, and I know that there is some funding that have been earmarked for environmental enforcement, and I see here there's a spreadsheet as with balances as of June the 8th, where there was $2.1 million earmarked or allocated. However, there's still a balance of $1.8 million, and a lot of that environmental enforcement. What?
So, Senator, you broke up at the end there, but I'm assuming you're asking what's the status on the funding for environmental enforcement?
Yes, I'm asking for, what's the, what is happening in that area in respect to environmental enforcement and the expenditure of that balance of the fund, $1.8 million.
Okay, so thank you for the question, Senator. So all of our purchases are actually beyond the threshold for 50,000 for us to be able to solicit for bids internally. So with respect to the $1.5 million for the purchase of the new vessels, we actually completed the public process. So we received the funding in November of last year, I believe is when we received the initial award. We got the award funds on the system at the beginning of January. We worked with the contractors on specs, and then we put out the vessels to bid in February. It closed in March, and we entered into an agreement in April. I believe the contractor has now signed the contract. So we are waiting their first invoice for us to liquidate the first payment. But the fabrication, the completion, we won't liquidate all of the funds until we take delivery of all 4 vessels. It's going to be anywhere from 10 months to hopefully no delays. But maybe 12 months is when we get the vessels delivered here in the territory. So we're really actually right on track with that in terms of fulfilling the procurement process. But we've done everything we can do now, so the money will start to move once we get the periodic invoices, which I believe will be on the completion of the actual vessels being ready for us. And then we do have an inspection that we will do in the States before they're sent down as well. For the 314,000.
4 minutes.
We just received that CARES Act LEPC subgrant at the end of March of this year. We completed the actual specs. We were trying to source what we wanted locally, but the cost has gone up beyond. Like initially, when we were looking at this project, the skis are going to be somewhere around 18,000 per unit. They're now up to 26,000 per unit. Again, initially we were only going to do 2, but now we're actually at 4. So we have to run a public bid process, and that actually I have it right here. We actually sent the scope of work to bid to property and procurement actually just yesterday. So we hope to be out for our bid process. If not by next week, then it'll be by the week after, to close within, I think, 21 days after that.
Well, and in respect to online improvement, obviously DPNR is one of those critical agency in regards to the recovery projects, as well as the construction projects that's going on throughout the territory. How are you ramping up? I know that last year we had allowed for some leverage for, I think it was an online software that you're trying to improve upon.
Yes.
Where with that? And let's talk about online improvement.
So I was hoping to launch the online platform for our permitting, our applications for home repairs and CZM applications. My goal was to launch it for this June. The contractors have now pushed that date out to hopefully July is when we fully do it. But there are some bugs that are happening on the application side, and so we clearly weren't ready to go out for launch until those were dealt with. Our Division of Environmental Enforcement, however, received CARES Act funding, and we entered into a contract, and so we actually have a separate online platform for mooring, anchoring, and registration of vessels, which is currently live right now. We started our vessel registration, officially starts on June 1. We started it, I think, on May 24th this year. We have been doing pretty well. I think we had one day where the system from the vendor was backlogged, and so when people were trying to make their payments, they weren't able to. But we have since been able to clear up those issues. But we should be fully automated in terms of I'm sorry, Senator, we should be, before the close of this fiscal year, definitely, we'll be live with our online permitting platform.
Well, yeah, we really got to drive that technology and get that going. In respect to marketing, and when we look at the new policy updates, new building codes requirements, essentially, again, adhering to some of the federal requirements, how are you marketing that information and getting out to the public those new information?
So I know that when we were pushing forward with the building code requirements that we actually have now promulgated, we were marketing that. And again, the building codes update every 3 years. Some of them are not significant, Madam Chair, if I may. Some of them are not significant changes. I think one of the things that was a major concern a few years ago was whether or not the wind load speeds would be, for roof design, would be pushed really much further out beyond the 165 to somewhere around 185, which would come at a significant cost to the territory. I think that luckily we were able um, to 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 demonstrate that we didn't need to go that way, that we had enough homes that were built after Maryland that sustained the damages that the storms wreaked. So we do some marketing, particularly around when we know there are going to be some changes and updates. Our next round is going to be focused a lot along the flood regulations, but there are some other things that we are going to be doing. I know that I believe it's the Housing Expo is next week, being hosted by the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. We are partnering with them. We're going to have some details and exhibits about the Stronger Home Guide and some other things that people don't necessarily think about, but if you do them, you're better prepared in terms of your home is better prepared to resist any kind of disaster that you could encounter.
Very well, Madam Chair, I heard my time call. Can I just wrap up with
Proceed.
this final?
Yeah. We, this is the only agency today, so I'm gonna give latitude. Go ahead.
Very well, thank you. So Commissioner Oreo, I'm always impressed with your ability to really articulate, your agencies, and I know your agency, and I know that there's a lot of component within your agency, and you have a pretty good handle on it. How are you mentoring, who are you mentoring to make sure that this vast knowledge is not just kept to yourself, but in fact that even a level of succession and at least, just having the information spread throughout the department?
Thank you for that, Senator. So, I mean, what I try to do is meet with my senior staff regularly, like on a quarterly basis, but then I also meet with them individually. And I think that's why when I'm able to come here and speak on a lot of the programs, it's because we do have a lot of one-on-one conversations about what specifically is taking place in each of the divisions and where it is I can help, and also impart just the things that I did as a director that I know that they're going through and having to work through. I'm also trying to do some leadership training for them. It's been very useful for me over the last 2 years that the leadership training that I have received, and so I want to also impart that because right now, I think everybody in DPNR should have the attitude that I had, which is, or that I continue to have, is that I celebrate my 23rd year of employment with DPNR next week. I think that everybody should realize that the work that we do is extremely important, and that the question we should be asking is, what can I do to make things better? Because DPNR is out there and we're just trying to protect our home. So I think that for me being an inspector and now being the head of the department, that if people set their minds to what can I do next to make things better, then we're gonna have a whole bunch of leaders inside of the department. And that's what I want everybody in my department's attitude to be towards coming to work every day. What can I do to make my department better so that the people of the Virgin Islands are better for that work that I put in?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you, department, as well, for the work that they're doing. Madam Chair, thank you for allowing this non-committee member to some leniency in asking some questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I remember every committee. So thank you. Senator Johnson?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I too would like to share some kind words to ODR, Ms. Agdalene, and JP Oreo. You guys answer the call every time we call, and it's your job. Some people say, why do I honor and give you this, praise? But there are commissioners that just don't respond. There's some of them I've been in here a year and 5, 6 months. Some commissioners I've seen in here twice. And not that they don't be invited, they just don't show up. So for you guys who show up, I appreciate it. Sometimes I want more because people want more. The people want the answer, they want the information, they want confident that we're going to build this territory saying in better than what we met it. I sure hope that working together, we can get this place going, get these funds used because everybody balling, the money's there. And what you guys saying about the capacity and some people is unacceptable. They want the job done. That's the progress. The commission, I want to start out with asking you this question about how many artists from each island receive stimulus fund from the VI Council of Art Act in their stimulus program, National Endowment of Arts.
Can you repeat the question, Senator? You were breaking up a little bit.
How many artists from each island receive stimulus funds from the VI Council of Arts from the CARES Act stimulus program?
So what I have on the CARES Act is 16. We had 16 recipients, 16 business recipients. I don't have a breakdown on individuals.
How is this information getting out there to make sure that more people can apply? And what kind of funding is remain there right now as we speak, if you have that information?
So the CARES Act and ARPA funds have been expended 100%. And then our grant cycle for fiscal year 23 recently opened, and we put out a call on that last week, alerting all artists in the territory to please submit their applications, along with what some of the prerequisites are. And we'll be taking applications, I believe, until August, and then decisions. The application period will close, and I think we start issuing awards either in December or January.
Is this information put out so that artists can know where to apply for these grants?
Yes, it is. Through our,
4 minutes.
Through our written press releases, through social media. Our artists also have, one of the reasons why VICA is looking to remain in the downtown district is because that's where a lot of the artists actually have their galleries up and around, whether it's in town, Main Street itself, or even at the Door Center, working with Kendall. So we place our staff directly into the zones where a number of the artists are, and they have direct access to them, almost 7 days a week, really, with the amount of events that VICA does as well.
All right, thank you. And I'm not sure if this question was asked. I think I heard about it. Under the direct assistance program, what determines ineligibility for these programs?
I'm not sure of the specific criteria, Senator, on the ARPA. On the VICA fund.
I didn't hear you.
I don't have that. I don't have the eligibility requirements for each one of our disaster assistance programs.
Can you further explain about your mitigation project, especially the community cleanup events? Also, is the community aware of these events? Is it advertised?
So yes, they are advertised. Like it shows in there, we've issued over $145,000 in community cleanup grants. Our education and outreach coordinator, Miss Christina Kitty Edwards in CZM, is somebody that's been doing our cleanup program for years, and is known throughout the community. What we did is that there is some large-scale debris that's going to be more costly, particularly vessels, and that individuals do not have a legal right to pick up vessels. And so we made a chunk of the money for the vessel removal, but then that the communities themselves, whether they be owners associations, whether it be grassroots programs, but that nonprofit groups, but if they wanted to organize a cleanup event, that we would be able to give them some financial assistance to purchase the supplies, bags. Some of them rented canoes when we did the Great Mangrove cleanup in April, so that we can get some of the things that are further off in the water. our goal is to reduce the amount of debris that ends up as coastal pollution. And we're being very broad in how we see that and making that available to be able to pick things up that could eventually make their way into our coastal waters.
A little bit about the ships. I don't know if my time may come, Madam Chair.
You have 1 minute, Senator Johnson. You may proceed.
Thank you. In you speaking about these ships and boats that are sunk, do you have any information about that boats that in the water barge that in sub-base? It was a big the water barge was for
The water
purifying
barge.
water.
So yeah, so I tried on numerous occasions to get our funding to be allowed to scuttle that boat and make an artificial reef out of it. NOAA's marine debris program told me, no way, no how, you're not gonna be able to do that. So we are still working on how we can get rid of that particular boat. When the contractor comes down for the $3 million project, which is all the sunken barges, Madam Chair, if I may, all the sunken barges that are on the south side of Crum Bay. So that $3 million contract is to remove all of that debris. They're going to take a look at the water barge because just on the scrap metal alone, they can make some change off of it. So my goal is to really get it off the seafloor and, if possible, find a way to use it as an artificial reef, and we can put some dive moorings around it and have it be sort of a feature for people who are chartering for the day or just being out on the boat for the day to be able to see. But that also, we already started our conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers on a permit for that and what that entails. So if I can identify the funding, it is a goal of mine. But it may be that the contractor who's coming in to do the $3 million project says, okay, if we add 200,000 to the contract, they'll take it away as scrap metal and they'll just collect the profit on the scrap. We may do that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Oriole, you have a lot of illegal construction projects happening, and I doubt that you have the manpower to really. I think it's a twofold issue. One is, I think you wanted the code to change or reflect more enforcement power or increase the fines. Was that it?
It depends on which section, but all of it needs to be revamped.
Okay, good. So we need to revamp that. And two, I'm asking about your illegal construction projects because it does impact the environment. It does impact the level of resilience for the territory, and then it becomes a disaster at some point, right? Yeah. So given the circumstances now, how are you dealing with the massive constructions that we're having illegally built out of code?
Thank you for that question. So one of the things that we have put a proposal together for is to do. We would like to run a free inspection program, so that people could have their homes assessed. Because we know so many people just went to anybody who called himself a contractor to make sure whatever can be done as quickly and as cheaply as possible after the storm. And so we just want to run a home inspection program that gives people the knowledge as to whether or not what was done to their home, the repairs that were done, are good, or if they need to make improvements. And so we want to take the penalty out of that, like the penalty portion out of that, and just give that advice out there. It is something, there's a grant program under FEMA called BRIC, and we have put together a small proposal for BRIC under that. We're hoping it gets funded. The illegal construction from a regulatory standpoint, so my officers or my inspectors stopped a job on Tuesday of this week in Estate Nazareth. And a neighbor called yesterday and said the contractor is out there again already. And so now it's twofold. One, first and foremost, it's on the owner to make sure that they are fully compliant. And then now the second one, and I think that for years they've believed that they were exempt from being held responsible, is the contractor saying, yeah, no, you don't need nothing from DPNR, and they keep going. So our plan has in fact been now to levy penalties on the contract. And once you start to state that the contractor has been non-compliant, and I now share that information with DLCA, DLCA says, well, do I have a show cause hearing on their business license application? Because you're required to be compliant with all of the laws of the Virgin Islands in order for you to maintain your business license in good standing. So gone are the days or the contractor will feel like they're exempt from any of this because we're starting to implement penalties on the contractors. But there's just a significant amount
So
of
pause
things
right there
taking
for
place.
1 second.
Mhm.
Going back to your original point that people are building homes without construction licenses. So in that case, who do you fine?
So
Fine or penalize?
like, so for us, when people are coming to us to get their to submit their applications, they may not have a developer yet. They may not have the contractor yet because they're still seeking bids based off of what the plans are. And so those aren't listed. I know the goal in DLCA reinstituting the contractor's license was so that the public would know who has a license, who is a licensed contractor in the territory, and that people are using the list from DLCA to select or to make their selections when they hire a contractor. For us, who you select, I mean, I can put, if I'm building a house, that I'm the contractor, and that's legally allowed. And so, and I won't have a contractor's license, but it's for my residents. I'm allowed to do that. So it really is a fine line, but what the penalty ends up being is for the work that was done either unpermitted or improperly. Nobody can escape from that. So
Perfect. So we're closing a loophole in that area.
the gap really on the construction side is that the penalty cannot be assessed. The penalty can't be assessed for work that's not done. It's assessed, you pay a penalty cost for failure to obtain a permit on that instance. So
And
there's
if
a
one
little
day we
bit
could
of a
have a
gap there.
discussion offline to see how we could fix the code to better assist you.
Yes.
Because it does become a disaster, right? Director Actley Williams, you end up having to beg and fight and plead for funding to fix structures after the fact that weren't done correctly. Hence, we have an Envision program, because it's interesting to see how many homes that they have ring beams. And the code requires these things to be done. And then when
Correct.
you see after the storm, so we have a massive amount of homes that need to be repaired in our Envision program because they weren't constructed properly.
So, and I can say that after the storms in 2017, when the FEMA, when the FEMA first, the NCR team came in and they were working with our staff and they were doing the assessments across the territory. They found that homes constructed following the issuance of the 1996 Stronger Home Guide had actually withstood, with the exception of some areas where you had those micro tornadoes that took down everything. So that was one of the reasons why we were able to not increase the wind load speed on the roofs to what FEMA was proposing at 185, which requires, thicker wood, all of these things that would have been a higher cost for people because the cost of construction has to come into play when we decide all of those things. So
I'm gonna be quiet now because the contractor next I'm going into his questions, so Senator Blyde, I'm sorry, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Um, Commissioner Oriel, there are several moving parts in addition to what we're speaking to, because DPNR have their role to play, and the DPNR have the role to play, the contractor and the homeowner. I know of several instances like the house in Tutu, where then are R1 and they've actually built 4 units, and DPNR don't trying to do their part, they continue to do the job, etc. So I'm happy to hear what you're doing in terms of the contractor is themselves, because who's to stop them? Even though you give them the fine, they continue to bill. So there's several moving parts that we do need to change, amend the code and do some changes, and I look forward to those discussions in terms of basically assuring that they do the right thing. And not only that, you have other instances where, like my colleague spoke to the ring beams. Some people do have the ring beams, but at the same time, they were not installed properly. You don't say there's a lot of moving parts that we really need to focus on, because I know you had a $7.3 million grant that allowed you to hire 23 additional staff. Of those staff, how many inspectors have you onboarded?
I believe it's 9 in the St. Thomas district for inspectors. There's 8 in the St. Croix district.
And is that sufficient, in your opinion?
I honestly, I'd like to see a few more. I think the grant only permits us to actually put on board 1 more. My goal actually is now to put at least 2 full-time building inspectors in the district of St. John, because there's a significant amount of construction taking place in St. John.
Significantly, a lot. And that's why I asked that question. I know them inspectors have their hands full. In addition to that, what can be done in terms of what does the structure of the process look like in respect to illegal building, etc.? How does that process work, and how can we get it to work efficiently and effectively?
So Senator, for every construction site receives 2 permits. You receive either an earth change or a CZM permit, and then you receive your building permit. Your earth change deals with just that, the earth change itself, and then the building permit deals with the structural. A lot of the repairs that we see also are just structural. They don't have to have the earth change or it's waived, because there's no, like if you're building up a 2nd story or something like that. The way the code is written right now is that if I stop you for doing work that wasn't permitted, when you now bring in the application to permit that work, you now pay a penalty
4 minutes.
on that. But up until you come in with that application, like if I issue a stop work order for you doing unpermitted work, there's no mechanism for me to assign a penalty for you to do that until you bring in that application. So one of the things that we're stating is that there needs to be a penalty for violating the stop work order itself. And then that is where we now can do the per day fees and those types of things, because now you're willingly and knowingly violating the law. We have provisions like that in our CZM, in our earth change, but not in the building itself. CZM is it's $2,000, but for your first time, and then if you knowingly, willingly, it goes up to $10,000 per day. But my air regulations is $50,000 per day. So at some point too, we want to touch on what's the actual number, because some people do a cost benefit analysis for them and say, yeah, it's easier for me to meet my deadline by breaking the law.
And that's a good point, because I know in an early hearing, my colleague spoke to some owner in St. John who had a significant amount of capacity and money they didn't care, and they continue to build. So I think we need to also make provisions where those who continue to violate, knowing they have the resources, we need to tax them more than a common man who don't know better.
Yeah.
We really do. So nonetheless, let me ask you, let me go to the next area in respect to the mid funds and I know over the years, we have amassed thousands and thousands of historical and official documents that we know must be preserved
2 minutes.
for both historical preservation and the continuity of government. And that's where you come in. And we also have thousands and thousands of hours of critically important video footage from folks related to like the likes of Blakely, Mighty Park, the late Wadabli, Lewis, in terms of our culture. So when it comes to your department, how are these historical and cultural artifacts being digitized in terms of preserving our history? And can we use mitigation funds to assist us in an area?
So we've tried to use the mitigation angle, particularly with when we were dealing with the funding for Enid that's coming to us from FEMA, and a very small portion amount was set aside for digitization.
How small?
I want to say $30,000.
That's small.
So the records that are in Enid as an example, they actually went through a process of being microfiched. And so at that time, microfiching was still a fairly prominent type of measure to preserve your older documents and such. But what has happened is that due to the climate that we live in and those types of things, those microfiche actually suffer from iodine decay. And so we can't lose the records that we even microfiched, because now we have to redo them and do full-on digitization. I think digitization is the step that is necessary for a big amount of funding. And there's no equipment to do that level here in the territory like that.
Time.
So we're gonna have to work, if I can just wrap up. I think we're just going to have to work with, continue to work with the Smithsonian, continue to work with other schools that specialize in this, but the records will have to be sent away. But our plan is to hire staff specifically to get trained, and then purchase the equipment, and then in the future we'll be able to digitize our own records as well.
So let me just emphasize for the record that it's critically important that we do preserve our history and culture moving forward for those that are going to come in the future. And I believe that based on your statement, we need to honestly find other ways, creative ways, because I like how creative you have been thus far with some of your ideas, etc. When it comes to our history and culture, because that's critical in my opinion. And I think $30,000, yeah, we have a long way to go. As you say, you need to train, etc. The state right now in DPR now with those precious, memories, I hope that we do not lose them. No way, shape, or form. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Blyden. I want to acknowledge the presence of Senator Whitaker. Good morning. Good morning. 1 minute, too. Good morning. Senator Joseph?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. In our first round of questioning, I ended, Commissioner, with commending you and your team for the number of projects that you have completed. Like I mentioned, I noted it was about 12 projects that you've completed, and 5 projects have not started. Now let's look at the ones that have not been started. And I'm on your worksheet the spreadsheet that you submitted. Tell me, what are the challenges you're facing in preventing you from starting the projects at the Cyril E. King Airport, which is really with your vehicles that were damaged, as well as the contents of the offices? What is preventing you from starting to implement those projects?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. So on the vehicles one, some of those vehicles were so badly damaged that they were turned in and they were sold at auction. So based on their year, mileage, everything. And so now those funds have been provided to do repairs to those vehicles and they don't exist anymore. 6 of those 9 vehicles don't exist anymore. They've been sold at auction.
So are you going to use this money to augment any purchasing of any new vehicles?
So we requested that, it was rejected. And so now
Okay.
what we have to do is we have to put together something called an alternative plan. And we're looking into that. There are a number of vehicles that did receive a little bit of damage. And what we're looking to do now is say, okay, can we use those funds for those that don't exist anymore to increase the cost to make better improvements to the one that do. And another issue I have in there that vendor availability is one of those things. So again, we're using FEMA funding, which means that you have to have specific criteria for eligibility as a vendor, particularly your SAM and your SAM registration.
DUNS number.
I've been to a number of bodymen all over the territory, and nobody have a DUNS number. So, but I'm offering
to assist them.
I'm offering $60,000 of work. So for me, I would sign up if we make it easy.
And getting a SAM's number and DUNS is not a very difficult endeavor if you know how.
Correct.
And so that may be somewhere you could assist them. I don't know if there's any local or private entity that does it, but I do know that there usually are private entities externally outside who would do that work for, of course, a cost. So it's whether they see it's feasible or not to actually go through that process. I want to look at one of the other items because I only have 4 minutes. I have a whole bunch of questions here. But let's talk about your permanent home that you're looking at in Subbase. Where are you with that? What funding source are you going to use to demolish the existing structure and everything?
So, so right now the interior demo is, I think, 50 or 55%. Actually, the demo portion is 100% completed, and we are now dealing with the remediation, the removal of the mastic material in there. All of that was a set aside from FY20 budget that the 33rd legislature appropriated for us and allowed us to use the funds until expended. We have an additional $1 million in a grant from the National Park Service for the rehabilitation because the sub-base barracks is a historic building. And so for us to put that back into use, it also promotes the old building itself. So that's for the construction piece. In terms of outfitting, the not started project that you see for approximately $400,000 in for Cyril E. King.
Yes.
So that's all contents. That's the loss of desks, everything. The reasons why it's not started is because we don't have anywhere to move those things to.
And that's why I was wondering about the permanent home, because I'm suspecting that that's all part of your phase to relocate into that permanent home once you have completed this project. What is your timeline? What is your timeline to complete your relocation to your permanent home in Subbase?
October 2023.
Okay, October 2023. How much funding you still have from the fiscal year 2020 appropriation available?
I believe
because this is because your facility at the Cyril E. King Airport was severely damaged.
Correct.
And so now you have to relocate to someplace else.
Correct.
Okay. So how much do you have of that money available?
I believe it's a little over 300,000.
300,000. Okay. Now let's go to your testimony. I just have a few questions, and I had stopped on page 5 of your testimony. I'm still on page 5. Your territorial watershed plans. You have an amount of $800,000 there. Kindly indicate to us how many watersheds you have. You said 8 watersheds. how many watersheds? Is it like $1,000, $100,000 per watershed you look at budgeting? And name those watersheds for us.
Um, I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I know in St. Thomas we have 3. I know Bordeaux is one of them. The area.
Is Midway one of them?
Midway was done prior to.
Okay.
So that plan was finished a few years ago.
Okay.
I believe the content, including going all the way up to the hill.
Well, would it be possible through the chair that you supply us with the name of the 8 watersheds you've identified?
Sure.
And where we are as far as the project is complete, is concerned. You indicated that the project is near completion with the first 8 watersheds plans to be released in July.
That's correct.
So it would be good for us to at least have an idea about these watersheds. Watersheds are very important because they look at the runoff and all of those things, and also the floodplain area. So everything is really tied into each other. So thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the leeway.
So you're asking through the chair, you wanted the list of watersheds?
Yes.
Commissioner, on your ARPA funds, I didn't see any, where are we? Division of Libraries, Archives, and Museums. You have $223,068 allocated for, to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus, including to expand digital network access, purchase internet accessible devices, and provide technical support services. Nothing has been expended under that category. Why? And the end of the fiscal year this year is actually when it ends.
Yes. So, Senator, what we really want to do with that money is purchase a number of e-readers and tablets and basically give them away for people to have access to the online library that we purchased. Our goal was really to fulfill that order using a local vendor, and the volume has been the issue. So initially, when we started reaching out, vendors were saying, we won't be able to fulfill that order at that volume right now, delayed. And so we recently now have gotten more contacts that says, okay, things have changed a little bit and we'll be able to fulfill that order. It will in fact be in stages. So now we didn't want to put out a public bid and then nobody was able to fulfill the order or bid on it. And so now that we've gotten some confirmation that the order can in fact be fulfilled on that volume scale, we're going to put out the public bid and then have them bid on it.
Did you run the numbers? How many per district?
So our goal, we know we can't supply, our goal is really to release at least 3,000 units.
Per district?
So, not per district. So we're looking at the Amazon Fire tablets, for example. Individually, they run at about $125 each unit. We can get it down to around $100 per unit. So with the money that we have right now, we can really only buy about 2,000, maybe 200, 2,000, 2,300. We have spoken with the governor. The governor likes our idea. He wants to support it. And so we're trying to get that number up to 3,000. And then so we can do 500 in St. John, and then we can do 1,250 in the other districts. If we can get more money, then we can add on to that contract as well.
And what does your data collection look like? Because sometimes we like to break things down evenly in districts, and we don't really get to the areas that have the most need because we just want to cut the pie in half.
Yeah.
So you do have a strong Hispanic underserved community in St. John. You have them in enclaves in this district, and you have them in enclaves on St. Croix. So my hope is that you use the data maybe through education to find those areas where the greatest need are and don't just cut the pie in half.
Right. And our goal really is to also promote this using sign up for library cards.
Oh, okay. So you
And
have a plan?
Yeah. So the
Okay.
idea is that because we have purchased the online library subscription through a company called Hoopla, now when we promote Hoopla, we also are giving people devices to be able to access. And then the sign up of your library card also then gives you the device. And that's the goal is how we want to execute that.
Okay, and the last point before we move to the senators that came would be, let's go back to these bats, moving them to Frederickstead. You have over 1 million bats in the Brugal distillery.
I wouldn't say we have 1 million.
You have a lot of bats.
But
if
you
you-
got a good bit.
So Frederickstead already have the wins from the refinery. We know that we are struggling to restore Frederickstead and really bring it back to its glory because it was once the breadwinner of the territory. And I don't want us to just this bat. Do you intend to hire somebody to help you with the bat relocation? Because I don't want the whole of Frederickstead to look dark and gloomy.
I think we're definitely going to take a look at it. I know one of the things that we did last year was we constructed several small areas for bat habitats.
Do you have a
placed
train?
them.
You intend to hire a trained bat expert to help you with this process?
I'd have to check with our staff, Senator. I mean, we have 3 or 4 PhDs in wildlife biology on our team right now. And some of them are herpetologists. They focus on reptiles and such. But I do know that again, our goal is to create. If we have to create artificial habitats for them to move to, just like because that's what Brugal is. It's an artificial habitat. It's just a structure they took up residence in. We don't want to scatter them all over so that they then crawl in other people's crawl spaces, hide in their roofs, and all of those things. No, we want to put things that they'll be attracted to. Those
Because
things are
that's just
usually
my fear, 'cause
collected in trees and stuff.
Because they did take up residence in the distillery, and there are so many abandoned buildings and areas of Frederickstead where they can take up space, and I don't want that to be the next issue Frederickstead has to face. Where okay, we want to fix this building, we got a bat in this one, we got a bat in this one, we have a bat colony over here, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, Fred, that Brugal facility is perfect for them for, it's big, it's dark, and there's not a lot of exterior noise is disturbing them. And those are the types of things. I don't foresee them, like, say, going into the town of Frederickstead and just taking up residence there. I think there's too much ambient noise that takes place that they wouldn't want to be there. And again, I'm not a bat expert. But our goal is to create these little habitats where they can go and find them, and they'll be in the fruit trees, they'll be in similar natural spaces. But if in fact it gets to the point where we have to remove them, then we're gonna work with who is necessary to remove them properly.
Okay.
We don't want to see a decrease in the bat population. We know how vital they are in terms of seed distribution and all of those things.
Okay, good, perfect. Senator Whitaker, and please mark Senator Carrion as present, and I will give you 10 minutes to ask your questions. Senator Whitaker?
Thank you and good morning, good afternoon rather to Chairwoman, good afternoon colleagues, good afternoon to the central staff, to the listening and viewing audience, and to our testifiers. I just want to first start off, I want to also echo, I do want to really openly say that definitely communication between your office and Commissioner Oriole is good. One of the things that I engaged you over was the audit. I brought up, 2017 audit that really shined a light on a lot of our areas, just and really the forward movement. I do want to say that one of the have to do, and in order for us to really do oversight and have transparency, is that there has to be a regular flow of information. So even as you said, oh yes, Senator, the consent addressed, and we address these different areas, is there should be some updates with this body.
Hold a second, Senator Whitaker. Senator Whitaker,
as we go
Councilor
through the
Whitaker?
process. I want to focus in on the historic area. I was forced late to this hearing because the Housing Authority is engaged in the restoration of the town of well, not just the town, the area of Frederickstead. And we know one of the areas, of course, as even I've heard other colleagues speak about the concerns of restoration. For the VIA Historic Recovery Programs you outlined in your testimony, page 2, you see a number of applications were ineligible, right? And with that, do you have any plans for those individuals who applied, for those who are not eligible? Is there any plans to reach back out to them and see how you can? I'm assuming most all the applicants at minimum at historic properties. And one of the things I also want to ask you is what kind of interagency collaboration are you engaged in? Is the PNR really engaged with all of the stakeholders in the town on nonprofit? How are you engaging to assist them in that regard?
There's a lot of questions in there. I'll try and go through them
The main question is,
systematically.
how are you going to grab back? How are you going to reach back out to those 128 people who are not eligible? And how can DPNR, as we not only just dole out funds to individuals, but how can we help them, with their projects, and the ones who we were not able to help? How do we reach out to them? That includes a lot of the nonprofits and organizations dedicated to a lot of recovery work work in historic preservation.
So thank you for that question, Senator. In terms of how do we help them, our goal is to create more programs that will see the restoration of the buildings down there. We know that a lot of the historic towns, the buildings themselves have fallen into disrepair by neglect because there's a myriad of issues that are going on with them. And we want to create a program that can grant some funding in there to restore the building. And if it's through a third-party developer, that the third party is able to recoup an investment, but at the same time, the family retains title and it gets some interest during that recoup period as well. We've seen this done in a couple other historic districts, and it's really about creating the mechanism legally for a third party to become involved in that. We also spend time, our department with the EDA and talk about the tax credit benefits, the enterprise zone. All of our historic districts fall into these multiple districts where they're all applicable for these different types of things to take place, or different types of tax incentive programs that can benefit them. And I think that the EDA has really pushed, and they've had us included for the last several years when they go out and they're pushing the enterprise zone discussions and telling people about the benefits and where they need. But if they don't have that minimum investment to put in on the front end, then some of them feel like, okay, well, I can't move forward. And that's where we're trying to lower whatever that front end investment is. I can say with respect to the historic recovery program, one of the things that happened during this, and I think it was I certainly was not a big fan of it, but it's an award condition, is that the program itself is a reimbursement program primarily. And so our historic areas are people who really do not have the funding to be able to take on a $50, $60, $70 to $100,000 project on their own. And so, and they avoid bank financing and those types of things. So what we are doing is we're working with nonprofit groups to be able to give the nonprofit group a set aside, like $1 million, to be able to then work with a number of applicants. They can provide that upfront funding, provide the receipts, and then we qualify what the program requirements are in terms of reimbursement. We're also partnering with the EDA because through their enterprise zone, they have a master contractor and for repairs to non-structural things. And so this is a great way for us to keep costs down, that you can utilize the master contractor who has provided unit pricing to the EDA, and he can fix historic shutters. He can fix the scones and the windows. He can pull some electrical and do those things. The only thing that's not in his contract, we're trying to work out what some of those details are. So it is.
Commissioner, and I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to thank you for your responses. But I just want to dive in on that point. The reimbursement programs, and I'm glad you're moving in that direction because they're not going to work. So I'm glad you're moving in that direction. So when you're saying you're going to be able to, you're looking into providing them upfront funding, is that something you've budgeted for? Are you able to use any of the disaster recovery funds for this in order to assist them, or and through the budget process, are you going to be looking for funding in order to have these projects funded? The EDA has long advocated, and then I also add that in the current law, the nonprofits, small businesses won't be able to get EDC benefits because the law made it's preventing from that. That's why I'm legislating to remove that. And so I'm getting at is from I think we should drive home what you're saying is that the upfront cost, that's something you budgeted to provide to the finance committee, the budget process.
Yes, Senator. So of our, I believe we're gonna put like $5.9 million, out from our historic recovery program for repairs. I believe that we're gonna be somewhere around 4 million is going to go into the hands of a nonprofit group or other entity that is going to be able to serve as the fiduciary while those repairs are taking place. And then once they collect the receipts from the contractor, then they provide that back, and then the department then replenishes that. So the reason why it's around 4 million is then, we have 18 applications or 20 applications that are already currently just reimbursement. And I believe that about
2 minutes.
I believe 18 of them is actually qualified. So we won't need to give the money for the direct reimbursements to a nonprofit to serve as a fiduciary in that role.
And of course, as you know, I've been communicating with you over the docs, particularly, of course, as we know, we've heard a number of times in the Ponte doc, and other docs, where we particularly with the Termit Ponte's doc, the Gallows Bay area, where we
so we submitted, we actually went out and got estimates for the repairs last year, and all of the repair costs were over 50,000, so we had to release it for public bid. We did actually send the scope of work, the detailed scope of work to the Department of Property and Procurement. And I'm just checking their website right now, but if the Gallows Bay dock is still out for bid, it's not going to have much time remaining on it.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, on that. And then I also want to say that a lot of the individuals that I engage with, a lot of them, I know some did receive funds, but a lot of them, there are others who didn't. Are there any plans to further, even in mitigation side, or is there any plans to have another program where you can help support the farmers through any grant funding from fishermen, through any grant funding?
So, Senator, we're almost, the spend plans went in. Right now, our CARES Act is going to be the next round. Our CARES 1 and 2 will be the next round of stimulus payments. The application period is currently open, and just yesterday Madam Chair, if I may just conclude, we extended the application period now from June 19th to July 1. Once the execution of this CARES Act program, as well as phase 3 of the fisheries disaster recovery program, we will have executed all of the direct disbursement programs that we have for fishers.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your answers.
Thank you, Senator Carrion.
Good afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the people of Virgin Islands and to the testifiers. Good afternoon to you, Commissioner. Before I begin, I would like to express my condolences to the Soto Gutierrez family. Today was the funeral of Amanda Reina, who died last week at 100 years old with a few months. So I've known her all my life. And yes, I want to express my condolences to the family, also to the family for the passing of mother, Miss Saipe is so Sister
Senator Carrion? Senator?
And the rest of the family on the passing of their loved ones, and also the sad news of the passing of Mr. Dyer. It's been rough. Sometimes you have all these funerals that just pile up, so we'll keep them in our prayers. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon, sir.
I have a few questions. Let me first start by asking you, do we have any of our federal fund projects in jeopardy of losing when it comes to timelines?
None
Anyone
of them.
in particular concerned about?
Of my disaster recovery funding?
Yes, sir.
No, Senator. We're aware of all the timelines and where the eligibility lies for any extensions that we may need.
So you have submitted extensions for any of the current projects?
I believe our CARES Act 1 extension for the fisheries grant is currently under review. We had an on-site visit from NOAA in the first week of May where we discussed that.
You're hopeful that that will be extended?
Yes. They were very pleased with the layout of the program, the partnership with the EDA. They actually had a chance to see the portal. They had the chance to see some of the media since it had been released the week that they were there. So they were very pleased and know that we're making progress. And it was a precautionary move to ask for the extension. I don't think it was fully necessary unless we have to modify the spend plan and in some of the parameters for eligibility.
And if the extension is approved, which you are hopeful that it is, what would that extension look like? Will it be up to when?
I believe we talked about December. We're not gonna get any new people to come in. Like there's a fixed amount of people that can actually apply. We're just trying to make sure that the persons that we want to distribute the funding to, if we modify the eligibility requirements, that it gives them time now to do the paperwork and get those together in order to apply. But it'll be pretty much the same process with the portal, though.
Got you. And Commissioner, with regards to that same line, so what percentage of that population do you understand that is still missing from applying or being eligible?
I'd say 99.9%. We only have 5 applications in right now, and that's both from the recreational charter community as well as the commercial fisher community.
And regards to marketing, you feel comfortable with the work the department is doing in marketing, getting information out?
I do. You can't turn on YouTube without getting you can't go on YouTube without getting a pop-up. They're print media. We're on the radio stations. We're broadcasting in English and Spanish. Every source of media, the EDA I think has done a wonderful job in pushing that. And then we are also holding our fisher registration meetings next week with the commercial fishers, and then we're setting aside time to discuss the program as well during that pre-registration workshop.
I would suggest you to reach out also to the Spanish station Latino 91.9 FM with Jose Martinez Sr. I haven't heard ad there, or if you could send someone from your department to speak on the program.
So Juan Cruz and Alfonso Garcia of my staff were on there this morning.
5 minutes.
I'm glad to hear that then, because there's 2. So there's another one that sometimes people confuse one with the other.
Okay.
There's one that reaches a larger Hispanic populations, and that's the one where I haven't heard it on. But also, with regards to that, let me ask you: have you received additional funding to provide technical assistance? Do you think that's part of the problem? Is the application process?
I mean, in our administrative costs, we actually cover the assistance for the fishers in terms of having the applications for that. We will provide direct assistance for them. No, I think that the issue really, senators, being plain about it, is its eligibility. This is a stimulus program, and you have to be compliant with you have to be in compliance with government guidelines for a stimulus program. And how we state what compliance is your filing of taxes. Being tax exempt doesn't mean you don't file taxes. It's every working individual's requirement to file if you gain income. The problem that we have is that if the income tax return is the primary method of determining eligibility, and you have a large sector that does not file their returns, then you have a lower number of eligible applicants. So, as I said, that's a staple of the federal government in these stimulus programs. I think during the stimulus payments, you saw a lot of people who were going out and filing returns with IRB at zero just to get their payments in. But what we're trying to do is work with our federal partners and create some alternative avenues for justification. And if we're allowed to implement that, it's gonna be a good discussion between them. But I mean, like I said, the federal government determines compliance with, have you paid your taxes? If not, how do you expect the federal government to give you money if you don't pay your taxes?
You explored the idea of maybe partnering with SBA or IRB or other entities to really provide that type of support or outreach, educational outreach to the fishermen and those in this business of the importance of doing business right.
Yes, so we're partnered with the EDA for this program. The EDA has the farmers and fishers programs where they have gone out and tried to give information on having your sole proprietorship as a business and expanding upon that. These are, the EDA has done that. They've actually had, prior to the pandemic, we were in person meeting with farmers and fishers, and speaking about the different programs and assistance that's there to us to have your sole proprietorship grown as a business. They did a few programs during the pandemic, not as, to continue to foster that. So I believe we have the right partner. They've been actively going to push the development of our farming and fishing industry as a larger sector of our economic growth. That's particularly highlighted in the Vision 2040 as well. And so, they've been doing a lot of outreach, and people I think if everybody really gravitates to what the programs that they're pushing and how they're telling folks to come along, we can see some growth in the economic sector under those two.
That's some good news. I'm glad to hear that effort that your department, along with EDA, are doing to empower and assist this sector in our community, which is so crucial that you mentioned. In regards to the Virgin Islands Historical Recovery Program, I know that, I had some of the same concerns. I realized that you had that were ineligible. You have phase 2, providing technical support. Can you maybe share what's the reasons that the applicant have been ineligible?
So I think that the two primary eligibility questions, maybe one is duplication of benefits, Senator. Like if you received any insurance payout or you covered, you can't come to this program and get a second payment for that. So that probably, that rendered some folks ineligible. The other part is you had to be actively, the structure had to be active. It had to be either be living in it, it could have been a business, but something that supports there was some activity that were going on inside the structure prior to, and not just it was an abandoned structure and then now, oh, I have an opportunity to get 200,000, I can go. It had to be an active structure in 2017 at the time of the storm. And then I think the last thing, which is when you're not in the historic district itself, you have to be contributing to the National Historic Site. And that's a little bit more complicated without being, declared a site to be contributing to that. So I think those three kind of factors are what whittled down the number of the applications that were deemed eligible for us.
All right, Madam Chair, if I may, the last one.
Go ahead.
Appreciate it. Thank you for
away.
Commissioner. I do have a concern in regards to our Fort Christian and Fort Frederick. Is there a plan to revitalize our fort? And with that, I know there's the repair portion, restoration portion, but I'm talking about a marketing plan. Is your partnership with tourism? Because we are rich in history and culture, and we the two forts, and I think they're not being used to their full potential. So, what is the plan in that regard for our fort?
Thank you for the question, Senator. So, so earlier I mentioned that DPNR is actually a sub-award recipient of some U.S. EDA funding that was provided to our Department of Tourism in the around $500,000. So our plan for that is to hire a company that specializes in the display of forts or museums. We're going to do a conceptual plan for exhibit development, have ideas for work directly with staff in terms of presenting through an audio-visual scenario, and then we do a build-out. We did the same thing for the visitor center at the East End Marine Park. We started with a conceptual plan with what the different exhibits would look like. We then broke the cost of everything down into 3 phases. We've paid for 2 out of 3 phases. So we're looking to do something similar with both forts to get some design assistance, put the conceptual plan together, get some costs on there, and then hire the company to do the professional audio and visual exhibits. My goal is that if you pick up a headset, as you walk through the different exhibits, you're able to do a self-guided tour when you walk through the forts.
Looking forward to it, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, colleagues. We had 2 rounds. Do you have any burning questions before we conclude today's hearing? I'll go from top to bottom. Senator Johnson? Anything burning? You're good? Senator Blyden?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, let me ask, in respect to the community cleanup events, I know you say you have 55K left to distribute, and most likely it's going to be done during Coast Week in September. The removal of derelict vessels at Front Bay, the barge, etc. What would that mean in terms of once that's done? What does that mean for that area for folks coming with boats?
So it's kind of it's going to be a blessing and a curse, Senator.
Talk to me.
So the blessing will be that this blight on the south side of St. Thomas will be removed after about 25 years now,
right.
Going on 30 actually. But what the department has experienced is every time we open up a space in the water, removing a derelict vessel or some other obstruction, somebody just moves right in with their vessel thinking that, yeah, okay, it's now an open space and it's a free parking lot. So we struggle with that every time we move something in the water, and then the public just comes in like, okay, something is here.
So what can be done to prevent that moving forward?
I honestly don't know. For Crumb Bay, we DPNR property and procurement. We've been in very close discussions about what we want to see for that area of Crumb Bay. Our goal is to, because right now all of the hillside is Zone P public. What we would like to do is zone it W2, which is waterfront industrial, where we could have more of the repairs for vessels, those types of things. And then long term, big aspiration is for us to drive some sheet piles, backfill, and create an extended bulkhead. And then now you can facilitate your marine repairs in an area that's designated for marine repairs. You know, Crumb Bay is not going to be a place where we're tossing a hand line in and looking to pull anything out just from the water quality itself. Nobody really wants to be down there. So it's been used as an industrial area for decades. It's where the power plant is. Let's focus it on marine industrial, and then that way we can have the recreational things going on in the Red Hook area, and then we pull the marine industrial down to the Crumb Bay area.
Sounds like a plan. See, so you just came up with another out of the box idea, and it makes sense. And I look forward again to speaking with you on that and see it come to fruition. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the time, and thank you for your responses.
You're welcome, Senator Joseph.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I do have some final questions because I was hitting previously on those projects that you haven't started. And I wanted to ask you about the St. John, your offices in St. John. How are we looking with that? Because I know you have 2 projects there. And tell us what's your challenge? Because I know you're itching to start, but something is preventing you from getting that moving.
Yeah, it's to finalize the cost estimate, Senator. Again, we have some numbers, and those numbers are from January, February 2020. So we're not trying to use those at all. Public Works is assisting us in updating those numbers.
And what is your time frame to get those numbers? Because we don't want to leave St. John behind. Tell us what your time frame is looking like.
My time frame was yesterday.
What's your partner agency's time frame looking like realistically?
We're hoping that within 10 days or so we can finalize, and then our goal is to have the project out for bid in July.
In July. Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. That concludes my questions.
Senator Carrion, you good? Yes?
We're good.
Okay.
Good on this end.
Okay.
You good, John?
Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but quickly, I probably missed this discussion in all my sidebars. Let's go to the Division of Fish and Wildlife for your CARES Act projects. The 2.7 remaining to be spent by August 31st. Did we discuss that today?
So yes, we have. So Senator Carrion asked about the period of performance. So right now, the actual spend plan, CARES 1 and CARES 2 is running simultaneously right now. And so the project itself will run in terms of the matter of weeks and then be divided up by the number of applicants. The extension request allows us to augment how we do eligibility criteria if we can get that confirmed from the NOAA directly. And so we'll take advantage of a longer application period if we're eligible to switch how the eligibility documentation is submitted. If we're not, it's not going to make a difference in terms of extending 1 month, 3 months, 4 months. you have to have the certain documentation in order to determine your qualifications. So
Perfect. And you're seeing a struggle with documentation in this area.
yes.
So if we're seeing a struggle in documentation in this area, what's the plan, education, outreach moving forward to get our fishermen, commercial and recreational into?
So thank you for that question, Senator, because it's been a topic for the last week. I mean, one of the discussions is to go back to where we were, I guess, 10 or 15 years ago, where in order to obtain your fishing license renewal, as well as your business license from DLCA, you had to have your evidence of, I believe it's a Schedule C or something like that that's been filed. You know, I think that we want to make sure that people are eligible. Like, if you have a business, then I think that you, even if it's a sole proprietorship, like you have an obligation to be consistent with the laws of the Virgin Islands if you're running a business. And then particularly if you're asking for assistance, financial assistance from the government to be there. So the idea, the goal actually, and I spoke with Commissioner Evangelista yesterday, I spoke with Director Lee yesterday, they are all on board, but presenting at our pre-registration workshops in advance of the registration period. I don't think we're going to mandate anything for this year, but we really need to start to have the discussion on people being properly licensed, properly filing their taxes, so that they aren't deemed ineligible. We are making a lot of strides and putting a lot of effort into creating an alternate scenario in order to determine eligibility to accommodate. But we're still at the hands of
So do
NOAA.
you see the remaining 2.7 million, do you see some of that going back? Given the current climate?
I think if we do not get to augment the eligibility on taxes being your way of demonstrating your loss of income, then yes, some of it will go back.
Okay.
Even on the business sector, for example, what they've demonstrated is that you have to demonstrate a loss in specific months, but their taxes reflect the entire year. So they did very well in November, December, but from March to June, they were completely shut down. So now we have to get other eligible documents that support the overall income from a monthly breakdown as well. So.
Your point of information, Senator Blayden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner, you're on point in terms of your focus with licensing, because I know earlier you spoke to the billing process and you spoke about a contractor, but there are many skilled individuals who are experts in just tiling or plumbing or roofing, etc. And as you said, yeah, the homeowner have a right now to actually repair their home without going to a general contractor. But the key is licensing. Make sure they have their license for that trade or that skill set. So I just want to put on the record. I think that's very important to know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. So we've concluded today. I think we've been able to really drill down into one agency and not pack the agenda where we're rushing through and not allowing time to probe. So I think we had a good day today, and I'll allow Director Williams Octaline some time to give closing remarks.
Sure. Thank you again, Madam Chair, for another well-structured and solid discussion on the recovery efforts. And I want to just ensure that there's a number of challenges that we are facing regarding cost, regarding the requirements for permitting, the rising, the escalation of our bids that we're seeing, bid costs and the availability of funds that impacting our project schedules. We want to just thank the Department of Planning and Natural Resources for their partnership and the work they're doing to ensure that all of these permits are received within a timely manner. It's the federal consistency process done for all of the projects that actually turn dirt. So you can imagine that there's a lot of work that's going on. And I also want to just also take an opportunity to thank my team, the Office of Disaster Recovery, and all of them who work hard day in, day in, and making sure that we are keeping the recovery moving. And to this body again for the strong partnership that we're receiving, because you know, my grandmother used to say, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. And it really takes all hands on deck to really keep this moving. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner? Commissioner?
Thank you, Senator. I'll start by just thanking my staff. I mean, in addition to all of the disaster recovery projects that we are outlining here, again, 70% of the department's funding is federal funds and grants, and so they're co-managing all of those awards and tasks, and I think they're doing an incredible job in making sure that tasks are being executed and we do not send back any funds at all. I think that the level, the effort that is being placed, particularly on the regulatory divisions that have to do all of these NEPA checks for every single project in the territory. I think our projects listing on the ODR website is some 77 pages long, and my staff has to touch each and every single one of them for every single department. And I thank them for all of their efforts in coming up with some of the processes and executing those things. And they're losing sleep and I'm trying to get them additional assistance because I know some days we feel like if one person leaves, then we're in a whole lot of trouble, and we would be. I want to thank all the different departments for their partnership as well, including ODR, keeping everybody on task and creating the space for us to be able to work out what could be an issue, and then we resolve those things in a timely manner. And again, to all the employees that are day in and day out just doing their job in order to make sure that St. Thomas, St. John, Water Island, and St. Croix are the best places on earth. So thank you all very much for today and the discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner and Director. We've received several calls from the public, and you have a historic recovery program. Is that okay? So we've received a few calls commending, not to admonish, hold on. Coming to you, Senator Johnson, the state, the historic recovery program, and Ms. Blackett for the work that she's doing, and the State Preservation Office as well. So I think it's only fair that I give commendations to their work because the public is noticing what they're doing. Senator Johnson, point of personal privilege.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to utilize this time of personal privilege to extend a happy birthday to Mr. Abraham Hewitt, who made 100 today. And I asked me to post one of the pictures. He served in the military and the Navy. Today it's his 100th year. I met this gentleman some time back. He's the uncle of Governor Mapp. But I can remember 2 years ago going up by his Lamo. And when I saw the Lamo, I asked Uncle Abe, who drives the Lamo? He tell me he drives the Lamo. So at 98, he was still cutting his yard. But at 100, I can say to you that he is still driving around, doing everything for himself, going to the store, to the grocery, doing everything for himself. And God have really blessed the Hewitt clan up in Rattan with 100 years of Uncle Abe. I think we have one more picture with Uncle Abe that I would like to share. They had a little party for him last week. That hat that he has on, his nephew gave him that hat. And when he saw that hat, he was so shocked. He was so happy because he had lost his last military hat in one of the storms. But they gave him a replica of a ship. I can't tell you the name of the ship right now, but it's one of the ships that was bombed harbor. When he saw that ship, his mind is so strong. He explained to us when that ship was bombed by the kamikaze and it made it back to America and went back to war. And he served on that ship when he went back to war. He is very sound in his mind, memories of his time in the military where he served, and he was explaining all of that without missing a beat. So I want to wish Uncle Abe a happy centennial birthday and all the best. I hope I sure can reach that age and doing things he's doing. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and happy birthday to Uncle Abe. Those are national treasures to live to see 100 years old. I had a deal with my grandfather that will go to 100, but he went to 98 instead. So, I mean, it's just commendable to see when our seniors reach that age and just the wealth of knowledge that they possess. They just walk in history books that must be cherished. So, happy birthday to Mr. Abraham Hewitt. And as we conclude today, we want to offer condolences to Commissioner Anthony Thomas on the passing of his father. That funeral is tomorrow, and condolences to one of our own stenographer, Miss Trisha Seeley, on the passing of her mom, who's also the sister of Celestino White, former Senator White, and that funeral is tomorrow as well. So what we're seeing also is a changing of the guards in our territory, and it's incumbent upon us to take up the mantle and continue serving. So we want to sincerely offer our condolences. We're in hurricane season. It has begun, so I want to urge the public to prepare and prepare properly and not at the 11th hour, because I believe that we will have a good season of nothing. But if we do have something, let's be able to withstand that. I want to thank central staff today, especially our media division. They do a yeoman's task. They are our unsung heroes that we batter so much, but we want to publicly thank them for the work that they do, because everything that's happening here begins with our media division. Thank you to our stenographers as well, who battled between trying to understand what we're saying, talking, and everything else. So thank you to our stenographers, and thank you to all who have made it possible. Thank you to my colleagues as well for attending today. And lastly, if I may end on a quote, and it says, "It takes no compromise to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. It takes no survey to remove repression. And to be yourself is truly a revolutionary act." So to all of my LGBTQ people, happy Pride Month. And the Committee on Disaster Recovery and Infrastructure is hereby adjourned.